Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Tabletop Transformations. Over there on the other far side is Tanya Keenan.
Hello.
Tanya is a mental health clinician focusing on youth work and working through a community mental health agency. She's also an avid gamer, which makes sense. It's a show about gaming. And has been playing tabletop role-playing games for over 20 years. She is the director of DoxaCon Seattle, a convention that explores the intersection of Christianity and sci-fi and fantasy.
And this over here is Menachem. And Menachem is a spiritual director, an interspiritual rabbi, and a tabletop game designer who's played RPGs for over 42 years. Much of Menachem's work is in the design and use of role-playing games for spiritual growth, exploration, and healing. And tonight we get to welcome Alan Turner to play and discuss his post-cataclysmic tribal horror game, Ehdrigohr.
And I'm really excited to have Alan here because not only is Ehdrigohr exciting and Alan a really spiritual guy, but he's also a dear friend of mine for the last many years. So Alan, what? Alan is a game designer, storyteller, artist, dancer, and author of Black, Lakota, and Irish Descent. He believes in the power of play and story as fundamental, powerful medicines which shape our sense of self. After working in the video game industry and freelance storytelling for over 15 years, Alan focused his design, storytelling, and cultural experience to create and publish this game, Ehdrigohr, the role-playing game, which pulls from the myths and folklore of Indigenous and tribal people all over the world, while exploring allegorical battles of depression, solitude, identity, and erasure. Alan continues to explore the play conversations initiated in Ehdrigohr on his blog, which we'll link you to in a while, via fiction, musings, photography, and additional writings about Ehdrigohr. Alan teaches game design at DePaul University here in Chicago as faculty for the School of Design and creative director of the DePaul Originals Game Studio. This new game studio focuses on giving students the experience of being at a large studio, developing mastery, and working on a long-term game project. Outside of DePaul, he uses game design concepts as a tool for examining personal narratives and empowerment with local urban youth. And his website is counciloffools.com or council-of-fools.com. Before we jump into the game, we have to do all important announcements.
Announcements. All right. We got a few. I think we're gonna Menachem, can you please put Alan's website in the chat so people can just click right on over. And while I do these lovely announcements, awesome, thank you. Oh yeah, cool, awesome.
Kayla,
awesome.
back-end producer, got it.
Thank you, Kayla. You keep us sane. Okay, so Friday night, that's tomorrow. We have Friday night cast. So we have Friday night cast playing Wander Home, a wonderful game, a cozy RPG that is diceless and GM-less, and using belonging outside belonging. And it is absolutely delightful, super fun game. And I got to sit in on one session that was a lot of fun. So that is, let's see, at what time is that?
8:45 p.m. Central.
8:45 Central, 6:45 Pacific, and 9:45 p.m. Eastern. And then on Saturday, we have on the Real Women of Gaming Twitch channel, Menachem and Hallie from Cast will be on Tankards, Tales, and Treasures, where they're playing D&D 5e, and it'll be 5 to 9 Central, or math hard.
People can do the math.
They can do math.
We're talking about matters of the soul.
Hey, some people think, anyway.
I know.
On Sunday, we'll have Gaze of Our Lives playing Exodus, Trans Angels on the Run in a Fascist Dystopia. Super amazing game. Another belonging outside belonging game, this time by Erica Shepard of Fading Roots, and inspired by Ezra Furman's album Transangelic Exodus. That's Sunday, 3 to 7 p.m. Central. And then a couple of others, April 23rd and 24th is the Real Women of Gaming TogetherCon. It will have everything that a physical convention would have: panels, guests, media rooms, workshops, TTRPG live shows, cosplayers, and common spaces where con-goers can get together and talk about mutual gaming likes, as well as free TTRPG tables for pickup games. So you can visit realwomenofgaming.com/togethercon-2020 or 2022.
I don't know which one it is. We'll find out.
We'll find out. And then in June, we have TAGS, Therapeutic and Applied Geek and Gaming Summit. That website is 2022.tagssummit.org.
2 G's and tags.
2 G's and tags, geek and gaming. Tickets are on sale now. Get them now for an early bird price. Submissions for panels and events are also open. So if you've got ideas, we'd love to hear it.
TogetherCon also is looking for panels and whatnot.
Oh, okay. That's right. That's right. And then a week before our next episode on April 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern is the next episode of Community Care, Playing Your Part. This is hosted by Renee and Hallie. And join us as we explore community care practices in tabletop games and adapt the mechanics for our own community care games. And now, Alan Turner and Ehdrigohr.
Awesome. So excited to sit and see you on screen, even though we're a few miles away from each other. Yes. Yeah, so Ehdrigohr, post-cataclysmic tribal horror game I've had the pleasure of playing several times with Alan. And when I thought about games of spirituality, easily think of Alan. We've talked about the topic as long as we've known each other.
Yeah.
So
certainly.
Alan is an easy guest. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk with you all and share some big and small thoughts and ideas.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about Ehdrigohr and how it came to be.
Well, there's lots of threads that kind of were woven together to form Ehdrigohr. The first one and the most common one that I often tell people about was back in my days as a youth worker for American Indian Health Services here in Chicago. And I use role-playing games as a way to, as an activity for my kids, things for them to do. And we had been doing things like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that stuff, and decided one day, all the kids were asking about Dungeons and Dragons because they heard about it but never played it. And I decided, okay, I'm gonna run them through a D&D adventure. And said adventure was it was an off-the-shelf adventure. It was somewhere in Mistara, and it required the kids to go into eventually into this tomb where you eventually find this magic sword, the usual standard fare that belonged to some ancient king, and they would use that to stop this dark necromancer who was wreaking havoc in the countryside. And there was a big wake-up call in that moment because the kids ran from the various bad guys who were chasing them, found the tomb, got into the tomb, and their immediate response was, "We shouldn't touch anything. We should be respectful. We should put down some tobacco, and just kind of be here and not disturb the elders who are in this space." And it was kind of it stalled my brain because having been running through multiple D&D campaigns in my life, there's this presumption, of the murder hobos, of the people who just keep collecting stuff, right? And so you come across what could be possibly a cache or treasure, you start plundering, right? So there's very much this raider culture thing attached to D&D's fundamental game structures and expectations, and the kids weren't having it. And no matter how much I tried to prod them to say, there's some cool stuff in some of those crypts, it was much more important to them at the time to be respectful. So, we got through the adventure. I forgot what I did to kind of keep them moving forward. I think I eventually just kind of had somebody find it and give it to them. But it really made me stop and think about, how much culture is in the actual rule expectations of the games and the narratives of the games we were playing in our role-playing games, and how, and more importantly, how assimilated I had become in participating in those structures. So then I thought, well, I should start figuring out ways to connect them to things that were more that are closer to their traditions, because we also had the weirdnesses of some kids didn't know what elves were and dwarves were, and like some of these are kids who are back and forth between reservation. So it's funny that in fantasy we have this expectation that everyone is familiar with Eurocentric mythology and fantasy tropes, but and everything else outside of that is kind of it's eccentric, it's exotic, there's all these things there. So I dusted off some old notes from I had earlier attempts to build this game, but it was when I was building it very much like a traditional game. And that experience with the kids made me dust it off, throw away like 90% of it and say, well, what do I have here and how can I make this personal? And that began the slow growth of Ehdrigohr into what it is now. And I dusted it off multiple times. My youth group lasted for it was a good 10 years or so, but I put it down, dusted it off, put it down, dusted it off as I got older and life changed. But then there's also other pieces there. Like every time I dusted it off because I was going through a personal change. I was going through life changes, and I was more and more wanting a game that reflected my experiences in the world, and it reflected my sense of magic, my sense of heroism, my sense of what's important to me. And so creating a space that was more about kinship and connection and survival and lifting people up. We had lots and lots of suicides, and both locally and within the up on the reservations. There was like an epidemic of depression and self-destruction. Some of it was tied to alcohol, some of it was tied to poverty. It was all kinds of things. And this was an opportunity to start engaging the feeling of that thing. We're like, what is this thing that's kind of moving around all of us that seems to catch some of us and just kind of take us out of the world? And so that became a piece of Ehdrigohr. I had a family member who was suffering through some cancer at the time, and I was visiting her. I remember there's this thing where I was coming out of the hospital because I was trying to figure out, like, I'm making this world that has like all this funky stuff. There's got all these big animals and monsters and lots of spiders because I love spiders. And I thought, what do people ride? Like, what's like the thing that's like horses? Because I didn't want to just be horses. And I had this great experience where I was coming down from coming out of the hospital, walking down this path, and as I was thinking, I was just rolling this around in my head. This rabbit just kind of bounced out of the bushes and sat in the path in front of me, and I was like, "What the hell? There's a rabbit right there in front of me. Why is this rabbit not running?" And I'm like, "Shoo, rabbit!" The rabbit just kind of sat there and looked at me, and I kind of stomped my foot, and the rabbit just kind of looked at me and twitched. I was like, wow, this is a really bold rabbit. I hope it doesn't attack. And I'm sitting there like, rabbit, you got to go. What do you want, rabbit? And after I said that, my brain went, rabbit. And like, oh, they ride rabbits. And at that point, the rabbit just kind of looked at me and just kind of hopped off. And so there's like all these little things that were happening at the time that came together to make this experience.
That's really cool. Young would have like a great time with that story.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, right?
I was thinking this is game design.
Yeah.
As a spiritual practice.
Yes. Yes, very much.
That's amazing.
And I also like to think that playing Ehdrigohr is kind of a little bit of a romp through Alan's head. Because it's not a very straightforward space. It creates space for an awful lot of queerness, so it addresses some of my own queerness. It embraces different types of family structures, so it allows for that. It allows for all these different social structures. It talks about what happens when people have kind of gone from a traumatic space and they're trying to now feel safe, and like what new dangers come about as a function of that, because they've never had that kind of security. So yeah, there's like all these processes and thoughts are going through my head as I was pulling this together, and I was getting less and less of a taste for like the standard stuff. I wanted something where that I could see myself in, that I could see my kids in. And I wanted something that anybody could find a place for themselves, even if they didn't like the world. There's a place for them to find themselves and their culture and explore without excuse, right? So there's like this thought of a lot of games when you start to include people of color, queer people, when you start to include Indigenous people, they're an aside from the standard thing, right? And I wanted a world where these people were all part of the fundamental functioning of the world. You know, they didn't have to make an excuse for why they're there. You know, they're just there. The world itself is transitional, and there's always things happening.
This isn't Oriental Adventures from AD&D.
No, it is not. Thank God.
Right. Right. I really like, Alan, that you that it in your initial story about how it started to come about, that like it really pinpoints, or it really points out the colonialism inherent in like typical D&D. This idea that like, wow, I don't know if I can kick in the door, I can take what's in there, and no matter what it is. And that's really amazing. So yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to point that out. Like,
Thank you.
Really affected me.
And that also speaks to one of the goals. Like, I also noticed that in the many of the games that did try to include Indigenous people, we were always still being there to either be colonized or saved. So the fantasy of indigeneity was really a fantasy for white colonialism, and how they live alongside the indigeneity, either as saviors or conquerors. Yeah. And so I wanted a space that where there was no colonization, right? That these people weren't being saved from themselves, and they weren't being protected by some great outside force. They're saving themselves. They're figuring out how to build new relationships and how to build kinships and structures and whatnot.
It's beautiful to see the recent expansion in the world of, you know, like the Indigenous Comic-Con and work by Elizabeth Lepense, and then of course Coyote and Crow, which has just come out now, about if a role-playing game about what if the Americas were never colonized.
Yes, it's spectacular. It's a spectacular piece, and got lots and lots of good support. I'm really impressed to see that. You know, that vector, how we started from, you know, very little indigenous owned, indigenous created spaces, and so now we kind of have this really growing plethora of both digital and tabletop experiences being made by people.
Well, not to talk just economics, but Coyote and Crow made over $1 million.
Yes, that blew my mind.
That proves there's an audience and a desire for this. 3,200 of us backers did the donated copy to give to a reservation or something. Yeah, they were blown away. They expected several hundred at most.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
people are thirsty and hungry and want this kind of thing.
They do. Yeah.
So.
All right.
So this show is about how we can use role-playing games to address our spiritual questions, right? Who am I? Why am I here? What does it mean to have a gender in the world? What is it, whatever the big questions we have are.
What is my purpose?
Yeah. Alan said that creating the game was a spiritual process of self-exploration and healing, and an attempt, a desire to heal personal and societal, collective malaise. So let's jump in and maybe start looking at the game and how it does that, and talking about the characters. We pre-created our characters, but we're going to go through parts of the process with you so you can see how it works.
Right. And it's worth it to call out that this is a fate-based game. And fate is I don't know how many of you are familiar with fate as a game, but it's kind of this interesting mix of a little bit of crunch and a whole lot of narrative. and it does an interesting job of finding ways to make narrative into crunch, which we'll see as we play. But one of the things that really attracted me to it was this concept of aspects, which is part of the character creation process. And then in traditional Fate games and the Fate games before it, and I'm not sure if it was part of Fudge, which is a predecessor to Fate. There's this process of asking some questions about your character that would lead to you telling little stories, and those stories would turn into aspects, which are like these quick phrases that you can use to manipulate the scene. So one of my favorite go-tos to that is Peter Parker, right? Peter Parker has a moment in his life where he gets bit by a spider, and he loses his Uncle Ben. That's a spoiler, I know. Those who don't know.
Sorry.
And but he comes out of that with this understanding of the world and himself, which is, with great power comes great responsibility, and that becomes this catchphrase that through the rest of this character's career, whenever he's in tight situations, he's able to invoke this concept to find that hidden bit of strength that he needs to turn things around. And in times when he's ready to just kind of shut down and he doesn't want to be bothered with something, that with great power and great responsibility also compels him to participate in the drama. Because he may not want to fight the supervillain over there, but he knows if he doesn't do it, then those kids in that bus might get trampled. So he's got to do something about it. And so there's this sense of responsibility. And so with Ehdrigohr, what I did, I'm a we, is take that idea and kind of marry it to some other bits of traditional storytelling within, particularly within Lakota culture, but it's also true of a lot of Plains culture. We had this concept called the winter counts, and the winter counts basically was just what it sounds like. It was an accounting of the people at the end of the winter, right? Checking to taking account of who survived, looking at the past events of the year, kind of naming the year after those past events. There are these these beautiful hides that unfortunately are stuck at Smithsonian that showcase some of these historical counts. And they have this great spiral that go around. They've got these little icons, and then one of the keepers could kind of walk you through everything that happened just by looking at the icon and telling the story and telling what it means. So I wanted to kind of reclaim some of that and find a way to make it something that if I'm working with my kids, the kids in my programs, they could interact with that piece of their culture in the game. And so the winter counts was brought in and married to that traditional Fate idea of these things that we need to do to kind of get our aspects. And so what we did when we start making our characters, and anytime we start to make a character, we go through a process of denoting our winter counts. And I like to think of that as a process of world building for all of us, because when we're done, everybody has a list of these winters that they've survived. Those winters mark salient points in the history of the world as seen from the point of view of the characters. So that means we kind of own a little bit of our history. And then from those winters, we also get our aspects. So what we did, and the way this works is I just kind of walk through the various prompts of the winters and ask you to come up with some narrative responses to those things, and then extract from that narrative what we're actually to name the moment, the winter of whatever the thing is. And then from that, also extract an aspect. And so our first winter count, I call the Winter of Childhood Remembrance. And it works off of the presumption that at one point you were a child in Ehdrigohr. Ehdrigohr is a tough place to live. It's terrible things are happening all the time. So somehow you made it to adulthood, assuming your character's an adult, without dying. So either somebody kept you safe, something kept you safe, or you managed somehow to become strong enough to do these things. So my question to you all was, what was it about your childhood that kept you safe, so that you actually survived it and was able to move into another stage of your life? And what were the responses that you two had?
Well, I had decided I was going to be from the Qian lands, which are on one of the coasts, and most of the people there live on the backs of giant turtles.
Right, the Wu Towns.
The Wu Towns, and some of them are solid sedentary, and some of them still move around. And I decided I was from the one called Wander from the book, where the turtle still wanders around, and the societies are divided into high and low, and I was from the low. And there was a time I called the winter of grandma's influence, where I was young and getting assigned to a job, and I was going to get assigned to a really dangerous job. So my grandmother used her influence to get me assigned to the head of the tortoise, where I ended up becoming basically a dental hygienist for the tortoise, keeping his mouth clean.
That's awesome.
And that was the winter of grandma's influence. And I came up with the aspect of trust those you love, and vice versa, love those you trust.
And I came up with, so mine was the winter of the falling. And so my character is from the Zul people, and we live kind of on these cliff faces in the middle of the water. And so down below are this kind of tumultuous water, and then up above on the tops of these cliffs, these tall rock structures in the water, are these very dangerous jungles, and there's like, murderous creatures, not murderous, but very dangerous creatures. And
there's some murderous ones too.
Well,
especially when the shivers come out at night.
Yeah, that's true. And so it was my people would live on these kind of scaffolding, and it can be a very precarious existence living on the sides of these cliffs. And this was the winter of the falling, where some of that scaffolding collapsed and people died. And so the aspect that I got from that is watch your step.
Watch your step. And I just want to call out right now, just hearing you tell those stories, just framing them in a sense and that context of the winter of this and like what happened has already become much more personal storytelling.
Yes.
Right. We're not just saying, I was a paladin from Cormier who got kicked out. You're not talking about family and kin and things that have happened in a way that feels more comfortable, right? And feels more personal.
It does, yeah, and it has me already more invested in my character, and I've only done one winter.
Yeah.
Yes. So then the next winter was the winter of becoming, which is all about adolescence. The prompt there is that adolescent years are some of the most harrowing times of a person's life. It's a time when you're trying to figure out who you're going to be. This is a time when your ideals and your habits often become established. What shaped you as an adolescent? Was there a particular person or an incident that shaped your interactions with and or perceptions of the rest of the world? Perhaps something you did shape the way that the world interacts and perceives you. What was it like being a young adult in the world and for the piece of the world that you came from? Tanya, why don't we pick up with you this time?
Well, adolescence is also a time of first love. And so my character fell in love, but fell in love with somebody who was the daughter of somebody very powerful, and they were not allowed to be together. And so a choice was made that was rather unfortunate. And so the aspect that came out of that was power is the enemy of love.
Okay.
And the thing about aspects is later in the game, you can be in a situation where things are going poorly and you can invoke your aspect.
Right.
Yeah.
It's even more than that, right? So it's like things can be going poorly, or things can be going great and you're cool, and I want you to participate in some drama, so I can compel your aspect to say, oh yeah, you know, I'm trying to think of a good example. You serve with the Dread Pirate Roberts, and there's some, you just come into the bar to get a drink, and there's some people talking smack about the Dread Pirate Roberts, and you know that's the Redbeard the dude, and you don't want to get in a fight with Redbeard because Redbeard is going to hurt, but you just want your drink, and I'm like, yeah, but Redbeard is talking that smack, and you serve with the Dread Pirate Roberts, and that's like a compel. And the reason to accept that is that we have these things called fate points, and fate points are the things that you use to kind of manipulate the scene, and you only start off with a few of them, but by agreeing to participate with the drama, you are rewarded with points that you can spend to manipulate the drama later on.
So I called this the Winter of Friendship Rescued. And the scene was my really good friend and I got trapped in the turtle's mouth. And I coaxed the turtle without injuring it to let us out. My friend took this as an opportunity to leave the Wu Town and go down into the dangerous swamps below. I stayed back. I could have chosen many aspects. I chose a soft touch opens doors.
And what was the idea behind that aspect?
Well, the idea that I didn't hurt the turtle to get us out of this, death trap.
Okay. Awesome. So let's do one more that's of interest. So there's this one where we share, right? So there's and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and get to this, but there's the idea of this winter of companions, where as we've gone through a bunch of different winters, at one point you look at each other's winters and figure out one that you were there for, and you have to tell us, what were you doing when this happened? How are you a part of the story? Does the other person know that you're a part of the story or not? And what did you get out of that moment in relation that's different from what the other person got out of that moment? And I think the winter of companions that you all engaged with was also directly related to your winter of adventure. So we can kind of kill two birds with one stone with that. So you want to share your bit, Menachem?
Sure. I had moved ahead with the previous winter. Years later, I had been tied in doing my job and fallen. And instead of climbing back up, I lowered myself down and left the Wu Town also. And eventually I had met Uncle Yual, and who was a crab warrior and had gifted me a crab and taught me to ride crabs. And then while we were dealing with the crabs at one point, there was one that was having trouble birthing. And that's when I met Tanya's character, and Tanya will tell you what Tanya's character did there. And I used that as Uncle Yual became my mentor, training me. My overall aspect is that I'm an elder novice, right? So I'm probably 40 or 50 years old in this game, which is old for a warrior class, in any culture, probably to at least start. And because in a lot of my life, there's a lot of newness happening in my life, personally and professionally. There's a lot of transition and shifting going on, and a lot of things are new. And I'm taking Italian two-handed longsword classes again, and I'm one of the oldest students there, and one of the people, I'm just a novice. Yeah. So there's this beautiful experience of being like not knowing things, where in the rest of my life I'm expected to be wise and know things.
Right.
So I met you all because I met Tina's character because Tina's character was.
So I had left the place of my birth and was traveling around the same area, like in the southern part of the Qian lands, right? And I see, so I've lived all my life around sea creatures, and I had met Auntie Willow. And Auntie Willow is a peacemaker, a part of an order called the Peacemaker of the Dove. And And so I see this like crab that's having some difficulty birthing its clutch. And so I am like, oh, well, I know what to do here. And so I run over and I'm like, sleeves up and I help this clutch. I help this crab birth its clutch. And I call that the winter of new birth. I got from that new beginnings happen unexpectedly.
Awesome. So yeah, there's cool
And
stuff.
that was your crab, of course.
Yeah. So something I should call out that maybe isn't clear to people who are just kind of coming into this is that Ehdrigohr is a place that has lots of big animals. So when people are talking about crabs, they're not talking about little crabs. We're talking about things the size of a Buick. So just keep that in mind. The Wu towns are on the backs of these great tortoises called the Unchiwakan, which is the holy grandmothers. And collectively they form what is called a stand. So you get a whole bunch of these things that are grouped together, leaning onto each other, and they build these big favelas on top of them. So there's lots of unusual, non-standard creatures. Lots of big spiders too. I'll come back to that. Yeah. So I want to touch on just one other winter here, and that is the winter of nightmares. Because Ehdrigohr is a place that is filled with terrible things happen to people all the time. And I also do want to qualify that though this is a horror game, it is also a heroic game. And it's not it's not like a Call of Cthulhu type game where it's about like, how long do you go before you go mad? It's a game that says, you're going to face long nights on a regular basis, personally, physically, emotionally, and how do you keep pushing through to become a better person? So, and there's even like a process of apotheosis in there somewhere. But there are these things that come out at night called the shivers. And the shivers are basically just bad ideas that come up from deep beneath the earth. They're dreamed up by these ancient creatures called the wolves that sleep beneath the world. And the shivers basically feed on people, but they're driven to consume and hurt and harm people more so because they have a need to tear people down, to pull them apart. And in a way, they are kind of a physical in the world metaphor for just the struggle against depression. That eventually the night comes. It comes for all of us. Everybody has to face those shadows at some point or another. And then how do you stand against those things that threaten to pull apart your resolve, your sense of self, your internal structures. So with the winter of nightmares, there is this presumption that everybody, all of you, have already seen terrible things, but there's one thing that shook you to your core. And the prompt goes, there are terrible things that lurk outside of the civilized areas, beyond the protection of the spirit towers, waiting for an opportunity to destroy mankind and all that it has wrought. At some point, you have had to come face to face with the things in the darkness and witness them do that which stretched your resolve. What happened there? What kind of creature did you see? What is the defining moment of this encounter? How has it affected you? Why does it still haunt your dreams? And either of you can jump in.
All right. So Auntie Willow was a dove, and so that's how I became a dove. And part of what a dove does, I think, as if I understand it correctly, is kind of a doula, but a doula of birth and death. And so I was with someone who was recently deceased. and I had encountered a spirit that, or a shiver that feeds on memories, and particularly the memories of people, of loved ones, people we knew. And so there are whole towns that like people just forgot about. And as I was there, I felt it take the name of this recently deceased person from me. And it wanted my memories of my ancestors. And so this, yeah, and I had to fight from it taking those memories. And so this is the winter of the forgotten. And from that came my biggest fear, which is that I'm afraid I will be forgotten.
And that also leads us to the thought that there is this shiver out there, and it got a taste of you.
Yeah, yep.
And didn't finish the job.
Right.
And so it's still out there, sniffing around.
Yep. Yeah. Menachem?
Yeah. So I had decided after many years being gone from my town to go back. Right. I was probably 50 years old or so. And I returned to wander just as a giant spirit came out of the mountains to attack and consume people. I don't really know what it was. And maybe that would, if it was a long-term game, I might find out more about it, or maybe I would never find out more about it. Who knows? And it was, as it was attacking, it could reach the low people best. And I literally saw friends that I knew and family members. And what had happened is, in order to try and satisfy the spirit, the highborn, the high, had effectively corralled and sacrificed those people to that spirit. And I had manifested this giant crab energy, like literally giant pinchers made of, before. And I tried to, and I couldn't do anything. And I came out with the aspect of, I don't know what to do. I am powerless. And then the spirit, ate people and left. And that's essentially where I've left my character right now.
Okay. And so again, that means this thing is still out there.
Yeah.
And what's important about these nice nightmare aspects, they're a little different from normal aspects, because they work hand in hand with another mechanic within the game, which is sorrow. And where all the other aspects, if I compel you, you get to say, no, I don't feel like doing that. I don't, I'm not going to represent the Dread Pirate Roberts. It's cool. They can talk whatever they want to. I want to get drunk. And then nothing happens, right? It's kind of like your no card. However, with your nightmare aspects, there's an irrational response that happens with those. When those things are compelled and they show up in your life, it's not easy to just say, no, I'm not going to deal with that. And the only way you can do it is by pushing yourself and causing stress to yourself to move out of that space. It's not a comfortable thing. And then the other part of this is there's this concept. So Ehdrigohr isn't really concerned too much about the idea of the struggle of good versus evil. What he is concerned with is this idea of the struggle of hope versus sorrow. And sorrow is a force in the world. Ehdrigohr is a world where there is souls are transient, right? They come here, they do the thing, they go back up into Makoche, this great sacred center. They do a data dump of what they've done, and then they kind of come back into the world and reassemble into another form or other forms. And that's the cycle. That's the cycle of growth of existence. That's how the cosmos understands itself. When people are overcome with sorrow, what sorrow does is it keeps them from believing themselves. And when they stop believing themselves enough, they can't enter dream. And dream is this place where we cleanse while inside that dream space. And so when people can't enter dream, they have to be witnessed by their community. And if they're not, so if they're ever in a situation where they're completely overwhelmed with sorrow, their community isn't witnessing them, and they lay down, they fade out and become a stain in the world. And that stain is a thing that's they will never again enter the cycle. So it's not death, it's something much deeper than death. And other people seeing a sorrow stain are immediately affected by sorrow themselves, because they know what that thing means. And so sorrow becomes this thing that can become an epidemic that moves through whole towns, moves through whole nations, and can take out just one bad, terrible moment can upend everything. And so the struggle against your nightmare aspects is also part of your struggle against being overwhelmed by sorrow. But it's also a constant reminder that this could happen to you. It could happen to anybody at any time. And so there are a bunch of other aspects that we're not going to jump into just for the just because of time.
Yeah, I have 3 quick points. I have 3 quick points, and there's a question I want to bring from the Twitch stream. First, some of you might know, horror is not one of my favorite genres, but I love this game even though it's horror, because it's not just horror, right? It's the more spiritual, psychological kind of approach to addressing horror. And I think we didn't mention the CAS gamers. Did we say it stands for the Community of Applied Spiritual and Therapeutic Tabletop Gamers? I forget if we said that. Also, this is a game, since there's a horror elements in it, and there was a comment in the Twitch stream chat also about not having the spiders in the game, where safety mechanics could be really useful to bring in at the beginning of the game, or if people have like things I can't have, like someone's like deathly afraid of spiders, that would be a line, or I don't like spiders, as long as you don't interact with them, I'm fine, that could be a veil. But I think it's a good game to bring safety mechanics into.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's true of any game in general, but in particularly games that where you're going to touch on these kind of darker psychological aspects, you need to know where people's limits are.
Right.
More and more games have safety mechanics built right into the mechanics of the game. They're not an add-on, they're not an afterthought, they're like right there. Thirsty Sword Lesbians has a great discussion of safety mechanics. Wander Home.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I should warn, I guess it's worth it to there's a give a warning to people that spiders are an inherent part of Ehdrigohr, partly because, again, you're going through this is very much a piece of me as well, and piece of my culture, as well as it is a fantasy world. So this isn't, but it's not spiders like Sheila running around doing all kinds of crazy nasty things. This is spiders as part of the ecology of the world. So the spiders actually replace a lot of normal creatures in the world. Instead of wolves, we have jumping spiders that move around. Instead, we don't have dragons. We have these great tarantulas that move about and protect the lands. Most of the time, the spiders are the good guys in this setting, and they provide a cosmological, ecological, and emotional medicine to the world. So for people who are deathly afraid of spiders, you'd be hard. You can run an Ehdrigohr game where you don't come across the spiders, but in a long-term game that requires you to do some significant re-editing of the world, because they're there. They're part of it. They are the angels. They actually weave the threads of fate to make things happen. They are the creators. They are the great creators of the world.
Okay.
And speaking of that weaving, the third point I wanted to make was about in creating characters. Like Tanya's character is a starter concept, right, that you include in the book, and has a detailed section about the Society of Doves. Whereas my character, there's no crab warriors in the book.
Right.
And I really noticed that the game gives a lot of space. There's really not classes or playbooks that you use. The game gives a lot of space for you to use the winter counts and your aspects and other mechanics to build a character as you would, within the world of the game.
Right. We're much more concerned about your story, and I'm also very proud of the fact that I think that people can start playing just by doing the story portion. You don't even have to dig into making skills and figuring out stunts and all that stuff. It's just getting the story out, figuring out your aspects. That's enough for you to start having an adventure with.
Right. So that leads into the question from the ASIC.
What's the question you see here?
The question is, so the GM uses the winter's calendar mechanic to sort of direct the players into a cohesive direction and to let their stories flesh out in a way that brings them together at the start.
Yes. So it's more, the winters themselves don't necessarily have to bring all the players together. There, at the end of it, you will have like this Venn diagram of connections. So if, let's say you had a group of 6 players, you could be guaranteed that there'll be sets of 2s that know each other.
Okay.
And then that gives you a way to weave things together. But to me, it's much more important that the winters are about creating this milieu, this prehistory that is meaningful to the players and to the game master. And I think what happens a lot of times with, like, Ehdrigohr has a lot of lore, and you get there are lots of settings that have lots and lots of lore, and a lot of that lore is kind of arbitrary when it comes to our relationship to it as characters. And so many games kind of push on, well, you can't do whatever because you have a fit within this lore a certain way. And I want that to be much more personalized, and I want that personalization to be part of your beginning of a campaign, because this is a long form game. I normally expect to like play at least 4 to 6 hours with people to actually get a narrative done, and probably over a number of days, sets of 4 to 6 hours.
I apologize for the impossible task we've asked you to do.
That's okay. we can get tastes.
But let's jump into what time we have left to start that, bring us together, and do a scene or two.
So let me go back to your list here. There's my notes.
By the way, for online gamers, we use a Jamboard to put our aspects and our winters together. Often it's on note cards, but Jamboards or Miro, those kind of things help.
Right.
And normally the process is you do your winters and you use index cards to do your winters. And then everyone kind of figures out their skills. They figure out stunts to associate them with their skills. If people are going to have any kind of magic, they figure out their traditions. And then you're kind of done and you're ready to start playing. But again, in theory, you can actually, in practice, you can just figure out your winters, have the aspects of the winters, and use those to kind of suggest your strengths. I think it's also worth it to point out that your culture is also an aspect. Where you come from also gives you strength. So sometimes you may be trying to do a thing, and it should be common, an easy thing to do for people of your culture. You can invoke your culture. And every culture has a number of aspects that talks about different ways people see themselves within that culture. So you basically pick one of them that's like, how do you operate within your own culture, and dig into that. And then of course, whatever your concept is, that's also an aspect. So if you're saying, I'm a crazy wizard looking for a fight, well then that's going to get you a lot of drama.
The fight will come to you.
The fight will come to you. And so I'm kind of going back to the Jamboard, which I had open in a different window. Here it is. And just kind of refreshing myself on what your aspects were. Soft touch opens doors, trust those you love. Carpe diem.
Seize the day.
Yes. Learn from those around you. Protect those who escape their prisons. I don't know what to do. I am powerless. And then there is trust does not come easily. Power is the enemy of love. People were not prepared. Oh, that's not an aspect. The winter of the new birth. No, that's not an aspect either. New beginnings happen unexpectedly.
That's it.
I can't find the rest of yours.
He calls ancestors.
Oh, he calls them.
Was
your awakening. Yes.
My awakening.
Your people are behind you.
Yes, exactly. And then I'm afraid I'll be forgotten. And then from my people, I got explore and recover the world, leave no stone unturned, which is why I'm traveling.
Okay, awesome. So let's kind of keep those in mind as we go forth. So situation. You two both travel up and down the western coast of Ehdrigohr. Okay. Tanya, what was your character's name?
My character's name is three Jaguar Weeping Cyclones. So there's I just want to point out it was a really cool naming convention for the Zool people. And it's a birth order clan. So birth order was, I was the third child, 3. My clan was the Jaguar. What I was doing when I was born which was weeping. And then the weather conditions when I was born, which was a cyclone. So I was born in the midst of a cyclone.
Very, very good. And then Menachem, your character's name was?
I took a descriptive name instead of a suggested name. I'm Old Child. People know me as the Old Child because I'm the novice, the elder novice warrior. Elder novice crab warrior is my aspect, I guess.
Awesome. Okay. So 3 Jaguar Weeping Cyclone and Old Child. Old Child, you are a relative to Uncle Yuval, who's this solitary healer and a waykeeper. Waykeepers are people who basically manage some of the roads up and down between a lot of the smaller client towns and villages. And Uncle Yuval is also an ex-member of this society called the Scholars of the Poison Foot. The Scholars of the Poison Foot tend to this great temple that sits within the Great Marsh called Pulling Earth Temple, and it's the place where one of the great wolves has been buried and sleeps. This is the holding spot of Menachem, the woe of fetid tongues, who causes chaos and miscommunication when it erupts and comes into the world. After leaving leaving the society, Uncle Yuval basically just decided that his main course in the world would be to see to the needs of the common people, as opposed to dealing with all these big crazy things that the scholars dealt with, or dealing with the shenanigans of the high and the Wu towns. He's just kind of more or less a bit of a hermit, and he's taking you under his wings. One of his best friends, however, who comes to check on him on a regular basis, is Auntie Willow. And Auntie Willow is a dove who hails from the eastern shores of the land. She comes from the Baratan medicine towns, and she has taken 3 Jaguar. We're just going to call you 3 Jaguar for now.
Okay.
Taking 3 Jaguar under her wing and taking her as a relative, and she treats you as a niece. She's an auntie, and we recognize that auntie and uncle are titles as of authority, as well as familial titles. So we don't really have a whole lot of people going master this or master that. It's, you know, auntie, uncle, these are people who look out for you. Kinship is really important. So we're currently in a time, the winter is coming to an end. The thaw has kicked in, and the better, warmer times of spring are starting to bubble up here and there. You know, it kind of comes, just like here in Chicago, where it kind of comes and goes. But what's really important about this end of winter, beginning of springtime, and the way that people mark that the spring is coming, is there is this tradition called the Parade of Little Elders. And it happens, it's an overlapping cycle, but it sets of 4 years overlapping. And what it is that there are smaller tortoises, these smaller unchi, who have not yet gotten big enough to have an entire town. They will be living in the sea for a while, and then they'll come onto land. They will wander up from the waters and into the southern rainforest, where they will fall into a long sleep. And they'll go all over the place. And what the people will do is they will send particular folks out to try to create particular paths to lead the little elders to have a place to rest. And because while they're resting, there's all this stuff that they bring with them that changes the environment. There's stuff on their shells. There are things that grow from their excrement. There are things that kind of grow that they excrete while they're sleeping, and people like to harvest those things. So there are callers who are sent down to the shores, and they will cycle in and out over the course of a month, and they will just sing these songs, and those songs will draw the little elders out, and they will lead them to the place to this resting place. Auntie Willow has invited you three Jaguar to come with her to help this time around, in calling to the little elders and tending to the little elders to make sure that their journey is safe, and a number of them get to a place that that will support the people and will nourish the people. She comes to visit Uncle Yuan. Uncle Yual. Uncle Yual, he's done this every year that it happens, and he has trained you in doing this as well, oh child. And so what they want you two to do is to go to the go and tend to the people who are the callers. There are these little caravans of primarily ladies. There are some other men and women who will come out, and they will they'll set themselves up as defenders and warriors and whatnot to protect the space. But the majority of the people who are callers are women and two spirits who will come out, and they will sing these songs. They'll sometimes sing themselves to exhaustion. So you're being provided with water, food, medicines to go and tend to the to go and tend to the callers. For you in particular, Three Jaguar, Auntie Willow informs you that there are these three people who are close to giving birth there as well.
Okay.
So she would like you to attend to that process for them, and there may be some elders. There'll be other older people who will come out, and they will sing too, even though they barely have the strength to do it, because they want their last song in the world to be one that brings nourishment to the people. Okay. So there'll be opportunities to see to people, see some people out of the world and see some new people into the world. Oh child, Uncle Yual primarily wants you to be there for protection. The crabs have always opened the way for the little elders to come through and protected those paths. And he's particularly worried about rumors that he's heard about eruptions of shivers in the area recently. Normally, he does a pretty good job of keeping the area clear of shivers, but he's heard some tales of some caravanseries and some wanderers who've gone missing, and it might be bandits, and might be shivers wandering. So there are way mounds along the way, and one of your jobs is to make sure those way mounds are nothing's broken, that they'll be there to kind of protect the people when they need a place to stay during the night. So like I said, Auntie Willow comes to Uncle Yual's hut on top of his great crab, and talks to a lot of you, explains how everything is, what the needs are, what kind of herbs and whatnot you should be on the lookout along the way, what kind of bandits are in the area, and they send you off.
Okay.
Three Jaguar.
Oh, child. I remember you.
Yes, this crab, I point to my giant crab that I ride. This is the one you helped birth. One of the ones you helped birth.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We shall ride together.
All right.
Does your crab have a name?
I hadn't given it a name yet. Spot. because of Jack.
Yes.
Nice.
It's called Spots.
Spots.
Spots the crab it is.
So I approach the crab and give scritches.
Spots is a very friendly, energetic arthropod. It's an arthropod crab. He's a very energetic beast. It lowers itself. You can scratch just between his eye stalks.
Nice.
He might remember you.
lowers himself so that you can climb aboard its back. It's
thank him.
the back of the crab is surprisingly smooth, but there's this an interesting tack to it. There's something about the crab shell that makes it so that you don't really slip and slide a lot on it.
Okay.
Your journey is northward, and it should take you about 2 days to get to where the first set of callers have camped out. Is there anything that you want to do before you journey forth? Any particular activities you want to partake of?
Well, if we were playing a longer term game or even a longer session, we both love role playing, and we'd probably have great discussions.
All right.
Express our characters and build our characters here.
But I would probably collect any herbs that that would be healing or comforting or restive. So, you know, if there's something like chamomile or something like that, that would be calming, and something that I could either make a tea or a tincture out of, or something that I could burn so that the incense, so that the smoke would be calming.
Such things are abundant. Auntie Willow has a ton of such herbs and teas. Also does Uncle Yuval. As the two of you are preparing to leave, Uncle Yuval gathers all of you together, and he smudges you, casting. He uses willow bark actually for his smudge, using its strong aroma to give you a blessing for your travels. This blessing is a temporary aspect, and you can just write down on your sheet, smudged against evil. You have one free use of it, and it's something you can call on when you are in a dire situation. As I said, it is the end of spring. Sorry, end of winter, the beginning of spring. The air is crisp. There's a constant dampness in the air, a slow drizzle. As one of the things about the marsh is that it's always wet, and that's something. So as we travel and as we go from scene to scene, scenes will have their own aspects, and this particular bit of travel and scene, one of the great aspects is it's always wet.
Okay.
Everything is sodden. The wood is sodden, so that's both useful and troublesome. It's mostly troublesome because it makes it hard to start fires, unless you're using some kind of enchantment to do so. You're leaning into the mysteries to pull that off. But it also means that because there is a slow but steady downpour of rain and water, the ground is soft, and so it makes travel slow going, which is another aspect that's currently in this scene. Travel is slow going, but nonetheless, you set forth and you make your way towards the north. One of the nice things about having a crab is that the crab has an odor to it, and the odor is barely noticeable to the humans, but it's a very distinctive odor that really is uncomfortable to shivers. So while you're on the crab, that odor kind of masks you and keeps you protected from any low-level shivers that may be wandering around in the area. So that allows for you to travel at night with relative safety. There are more powerful and older shivers that have been around for a few cycles that can overcome such things. But for our needs, it means that you have a relatively peaceful northern journey. And as you find yourself approaching the first camp, and that second morning, as the sun is rising, and it's you're covered in wetness. There's dew everywhere. Everything on you is sodden. The sun is rising up, and it's a blessing because that little bit of sunlight is the one thing that starts to dry stuff off for you. You come over a hill, and you see on another hill just a little further away, there are a group of people sitting on top of the hill, They've been apparently washing clothes, making baskets, hanging hanging things for shelter, and there's maybe 6 or 7 of them up there, and they see you approaching, and one lady stands up and just kind of waves at a lot of you.
Let's go over.
This is so weird. I keep seeing myself in Twitch, and I'm like, there's like this echo.
It's like a
So as you come up, like I said, there's a lot of these people here. There's one tall woman, a long black hair, kind of walnut colored skin. She approaches you, introduces herself as Minila, and she is the lead caller in the area, and she welcomes you. She's very grateful to have one of the doves, and mind you, as a dove, you're treated as a you're a holy person. You are a medicine person of a sort, and people look forward to your arrival in spaces. They don't like you to stick around too much because you and spirits talk too much.
Okay.
And she also directs you, what is I keep forgetting your name, oh child, to go and speak with Sangte, who is there's a gentleman, an older gentleman, maybe about your age, who is at the foot of the hill, standing with some younger men with spears. And he's the lead guard in the area.
Okay. I'll go do that.
So you approach Sangte. You have any particular questions for him?
I will say, hello, I am old child, sent by Uncle You All to assist in guarding the singers.
It's fairly straightforward. Again, Uncle You All is well known in the area. Also seen as a holy person. Knowing that you're one of his relatives, they're so excited to have you. And immediately he launches into, oh, the graces have smiled on us. We were just trying to figure out how to solve a problem. Some of the younger ones went on patrol last night, further up to the north towards the caves, and we heard the sounds of battle, but we're not able to track them down because the swamp has swallowed all of footprints and evidence of people moving through. We are hoping that maybe you can go and find that group. We suspect they might be wounded, hurt. Could you assist us? There's only a few of us here. We didn't have enough people to travel with the callers so that we could have lots of small guardian sects to manage things.
Of course.
And while you're up talking to Manila, Three Jaguar, it's taking a while for these names to settle in my head. You are she says something similar, that not only did these young warriors go off to the north, there were a couple of, they went off because there are like these big moss beds that the ladies are preparing for the little elders. And there were a couple of ladies who wanted to go and gather some roots that pop up in the moonlight, and that's why they're leading them there in the first place.
Okay.
And she's hoping that the two, maybe you could go in and help see if they're okay, bring them back.
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Same group.
Same group.
Okay.
And she directs you down towards where Sangte is, and you see Oh Child having an engaged conversation with him.
Okay. And you said that these were elders who went to go find these?
No, they're younger people. They're elders,
younger people. Okay.
Wandering around deep in the marsh late at night.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay. All right. So I don't know what's Old Child's talking about. So I come up to Old Child and I say, friend, I understand that some people went wandering in the swamp.
That's what I was told too. We must find them and see if they need help.
Let's do it. I think that's what we're here for. So yeah, we set out.
You set out. Okay. My first question is, are you bringing spots with you, or is spots staying back within the camp?
I would assume, since we're going out and it might get night, it'd be good to have spots for the added, protection of whoever we find.
Okay. Fair enough. And you just set out. So now here's the problem: is like Sangte said, the marsh. Well, we've already established that there's like this constant drizzle. The marsh is kind of really quickly swallows up evidence of people's passage. So what you're going to want to do is try to figure out if you can identify the route that they took through the reeds, as their and which of these moss mounds that they went to tend to. So this is when we start getting into dice rolling.
Could survival help me as a skill?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So you can use survival for tracking.
Yeah.
And let's talk for a moment about the different types of actions that we can take. And
yeah.
So, oh my God, time goes by fast, doesn't it?
I know, right?
In a Fate game, we have 4 basic actions. They are overcome, create an advantage, attack, and defend. Overcome is like your standard role-playing game roll, right? Like if I say, hey, you gotta make a saving throw versus a thing, or you gotta make a climb check, that's an overcome. It's basically when you're presented with a challenge, hindrance, barrier, or general task that has to be undertaken. Then there's a create an advantage, which is used to assess opponents and reveal things. It's also used to create a benefit for yourself that will affect a later roll. And they're basically narrative benefits that you create that you can stack. And eventually, once there are enough of them, they can give you a very, very positive roll. And then there's an attack where you just basically wail on someone or something, and defend if something is actually trying to attack you. These are done using dice rolls with our fate dice, which are these.
I have to show off your Ehdrigohr specific ones.
Nice.
And
this is the plus sign. This is the minus sign.
Yes. And traditionally we have 4 of these dice, and you're rolling for either to get a positive, a negative, or an empty space.
A blank.
When you this gives you a range of -4 to +4 on a roll, and then you will also add your effects from stunts and skills that may fall into the you think can affect the situation. And also, this is a place where you can use an aspect to help with a roll that is going poorly, or if you just want to make a really awesome roll in this situation.
Okay.
So do either of you have survival?
I do.
I do too.
I was thinking I could also use concentration first to make the survival roll better.
Right. So that would be creating an advantage for yourself.
Yeah.
You concentrate and still, and that creates a momentary aspect that you can use. So what would you be doing with this concentration?
I would do a couple of the martial positions, moves like kind of like in a Tai Chi manner, slowed down to calm myself and center myself.
And what's the aspect you give yourself from that centering?
Keep it simple.
Like
you can find the way.
You can find a way.
Focus. Yeah.
Focus. Basically, you're trying to get focus. This is an easy thing to do, and we have these difficulties, right? Difficulties range from abysmal, which is a -4, to mythic, which is a +10. In our case, this is an average thing. There's you're in a comfortable space. Water's coming down around you. You're up to your ankles in gross ground. So it takes a little while for you to kind of settle yourself. So just give me a simple average roll. That means you need a +1 or higher. If you succeed by more than 2 points, then you succeed with style.
With my +1 for average, I get a 1.
Right. So you just have it. So now you have focus, and now you can go ahead and use that focus. Look around with your survival to see if you can identify any kind of trail.
So I get +1 to my +3 because I'm good at survival.
What's your survival? Your survival is 3?
+3.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the
focus
advantage
allows,
that you've created is you have to invoke it. You get to invoke it for free because you create that advantage.
right.
And that will give you an additional +2 to your roll.
Oh.
Or it will allow you to re-roll the roll. You have to choose which one you want to do. So we start just by re-rolling the roll. Sorry, we start by just rolling the roll.
Yeah. Since I have a +3 and a +2, then I come out with a 5.
Okay.
I rolled a 0.
All right. So you stop, you listen, you attune yourself to the world around you. You smell the grasses, you listen to the water, you listen to where everything, all the bits and pieces are shifting, and you can feel those places and sense those places where the group has pushed through this mire and caused places where the water is kind of settling in a little bit more. And it's a very easy to miss trail, but because of your great training from Uncle Yuval, you're able to kind of pick up where they went.
So I think I'm guessing there's something dramatic when we find them.
Mm-hmm.
So given the time,
yes. Oh, right. It is.
Let's skip ahead to that dramatic moment, okay, where we find them and discover something.
So you travel and you find the spot, and there's this great expanse of this kind of flattened moss where they've made this area for the little elders to rest. It's alongside the edge of a short foothill, and it looks like there's been some kind of landslide that has shifted and come down into the moss mounds, and maybe they have been forced to retreat into a cave to not be affected by that landslide.
Mm.
As you approach, just the sound of you moving around on spots, you hear them yelling out from inside the cave, "Can you help us?"
I hear them.
Relatives, we are here.
People call out. There's excitement, but they're also telling you, be careful. There is an Yahila in the area, and what that is a particular type of shiver that most often comes down from the mountains, and they're like giants.
Mm. Okay.
It's daytime, approaching early evening at this point, but you don't see any sign of this thing. There's lots of rock here, but there's lots of mud. There's more mud than rock or anything. So it would take a great deal of effort to remove enough mud away from the opening to allow the people to come out. And time is of the essence because the sun is starting to go down. If that Yahila is here, wherever it's hiding, it's going to arise as soon as the sun is down.
That probably invokes my sorrow in some way, because giant spirit Yahila is probably what attacked my people. Is that right?
Yes. So it doesn't invoke your sorrow as much as
invoke, but probably
it triggers your nightmare.
Yeah.
And where other folks might have had the thought to go back to try to get more people to come out and help, you feel a certain immediacy. You know, this has to be done now, because these people can be slaughtered overnight. Who knows what this thing can do?
I would like to ask Spots to help.
How would you do that?
So I have animal handling for +1, but I also have attunement for +3. And I don't know if I can combine those. And I'm new to Fate, so like,
Mhm.
please help.
Well,
guide
yeah,
me.
the needs, how these skills work with from every Fate game is a little bit different.
Okay.
Attunement is very much a more mystical version of a concentration that kind of lets you connect with things.
Okay.
And give you an extra boost to do some stuff.
Okay.
You have so you could go to spots and attune with spots.
That's what I was thinking.
And connect to its heart.
Yeah.
And then once you've made that connection, you could say that you're speaking to his heart, and then use that as a way to get spots to do the thing that you need to do.
Okay.
Because yes, crabs are really good at digging through mud.
Right. And if Spots is able also to have this kind of pheromone that hides or that shields from the shivers, then it might be good to kind of station Spots at the opening of this, and to kind of protect them through the night, until the dawn comes and we can dig them out.
So again, your first action then is going to be to create an advantage with your attune.
Okay.
You haven't done this with spots in a long time, so I'm going to call it a and for the sake of drama, I am going to call it I just lost my list. I'm going to call it fair. There's something +2 or higher.
Okay.
And if you fail, there might be an opportunity to start using some aspects. But let's do the roll first.
Okay. So, and I will roll. I'm using attunement, you said, right?
Yes.
So does that mean I use 3 dice?
No, you use all the dice all the time. You roll the dice and you add your bonus on attunement. So what's your attunement right now?
+3.
So yeah, you add 3 to the roll.
Oh, okay. And how many dice do I roll? I'm sorry.
All 4.
All 4. Okay.
It's always 4 dice.
Always 4. Thank you. Excuse me. I got 2 pluses, a minus, and a blank.
So that's 1.
So 1. 1 total. And then I can add.
And you add 3 from your attunement. So that's 4.
4.
So you only need to get to, you got 2 higher than that. So that means you have not only succeeded, you succeeded with style.
Ooh.
He remembers you.
Yes. And what that means is that you get this temporary aspect. Normally to invoke an aspect, you have to spend a fate point to do so. When you first make an advantage, you can normally use that advantage once.
Okay.
When you succeed with style, you could use it twice.
Ooh. Okay.
So you kind of have this lingering connection to Spots right now, where you and Spots are kind of vibing.
Okay.
And now you want to instruct Spots to do what it is you need for him to do.
Okay. All right. So I scritch him between the eyes again, and I explain that I need him to protect these people. And can he shield us to lay quietly in front of their hiding place and shield.
So our plan is to make it through the night.
Make it through the night, and then I'll and then if I've got 2 of those aspects, or if I can do this, we'll ask him to help dig.
So you're not going to dig tonight. You're just protecting.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I don't know.
Do we have time to dig first and then station?
You could.
Okay.
If you could.
For the sake of drama, we could.
Yes. You would not have time to dig and get them back home.
Right.
So but you could open the space, because you don't know what state they're inside that place. And
that's true.
It sounds like some of them are hurt.
Okay.
Let's dig.
So, yeah, let's dig.
Let's wrap this up in a few minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks.
No worries. Oh boy, what will you be doing while this is happening?
During the digging?
Yeah.
I think I need to be on watch at most. I don't think I have much to do other than help the digging, right? I mean, Spots is my speed, so
yeah. So getting Spots to dig is not a hard thing. I wouldn't normally even ask you to roll for it, because that's what crabs do. They dig. However, it's going to take a little while for spots to get through all of this stuff. And what happens as you begin the process of digging is that the sun does go down, and it's at the point when you're about halfway through, when you can just start seeing the people. There's some holes that you can start seeing through. That's when you hear the sound. There is a sound of boughs breaking, twigs snapping, great bits of water sloshing, and just off in the distance, and as just kind of silhouetted slightly in those last bits of sunset colors, you see this large form pulling itself up from the mire, covered in moss and bramble, and stinking to high heaven as it stretches up. It stands above what few trees are in the area, and it begins to cast its gaze around. It has a form that seems somewhat human, but with strange bits and pieces of other animals attached to it. Its mouth is not on its face; it's somewhere in its belly, and it just moves around. It's like it's huffing with its mouth, trying to get a taste for where everyone is.
And with that cliffhanger,
Yes.
I imagine we want to get 3 Jaguar in there to help the people inside, and I have to somehow not be compelled with being powerless in the face of the one that destroyed my tribe.
Yeah, and so that's how it play out. 3 Jaguar go in and tend to the people who are inside. One or both of you wind up having to fight off this thing, and also figure out what the heck is it doing here. It takes a little while for such a big creature to come down from the mountains, and if it's down here, that means there must be more of them down here, and that leads to greater and greater situations. Meanwhile, the little elders are beginning their walk, and the people have to go in and sing the song, because they're singing the song. The song is loud and is going to draw attention, and so that's going to bring more of these things here. So you have to figure out how to balance the needs of the people to get these creatures here, save the creatures, save the people, fend off the monsters, and make it through a few nights.
Okay. And so the little elders are walking during the night as well?
Yes.
Oh man.
They don't.
I want to save them.
Yes. Just picture these big van-sized box turtles making their way through.
Oh, oof.
So you can see how this can play into fear and make you confront your stuff.
Yeah.
And if you were trying to approach this from much more of a spiritual direction, what I would things that I would do, one is I would start off by asking people what are things that they feel like they need to engage, that they want to connect to, and try to get them to put those things into their winters, and then find aspects of those things that you can pepper throughout the scenes that you're engaging, so that people will start to know, oh, that thing over there is for me, and here's how I deal with it. There's different ways we wind up using skills, where we have like skill rituals where it takes a while to actually work through a thing, and then so people have to keep telling you what kind of advantages they're creating, and those advantages are great opportunities to get people to talk about what are the things they need to make happen in their life, so that they can take the next step.
Wow. Wow, there's so much potential there.
You put a lot of intention into character creation.
Yeah.
A lot of intention in character creation, and then a lot of intention in the kind of choices that the people are making, and the kind of stories they have to create on the fly to move them through the narrative and the drama.
Right.
And then don't forget this idea of kind of that we do have this stuff like sorrow and the nightmares there. So there are these little tweakables, right? These things, they're like, hey, there's this tender spot. And you have a conversation ahead of time, says, we're going to touch these tender spots. Are you okay with these tender spots being touched? What are your safe words? What's okay, what's not okay? And then figure out ways to do it, and then ways to stop it when it's not comfortable for people, and then have conversations afterwards. Because the great thing about these kinds of games, I feel, is that your character doesn't grow because they get a lot of stuff. they grow because they get more story, and more story connects them more and more to the world around them. And so they develop more responsibility to their world around them. But they also get more medicine from the world around them as they do so.
Like if I was using this character to play through the idea of being older and not knowing things and everything being new to me, I might have made my last aspect that you can compel me with more about I feel foolish, or I feel like I should know things and I don't, or it might be something I could play with about the darker side, the harder side of learning things anew at an older age.
Yes. Kind of digging into those inadequacies, and what really I feel works really well when you have a group of people. A large part of dealing with sorrow is that most times you can't actually remove the sorrow from yourself. So the people around you have to witness, and you have to create ritual for you to help pull you through it. That's a requirement within the game. Other people have to step up for you. And sometimes you have to ask other people, say, hey, will you help me remove the stuff from me? But it requires you to own the heaviness that's inside of you and say, hey, I'm not seeing the world, I don't believe in myself anymore. And remember, that's the way sorrow works, where the other aspects, you get to say, I'm this cool person, I got this cool thing, and I'm going to believe in it, I'm going to believe in myself. And when you have a point of sorrow, the game master goes, but you don't really believe in yourself. Right. Are you sure? Right.
Right.
They compel the sorrow, and that makes you have to struggle against your own inner fears.
Well, and that's, I mean, the idea of having to engage the community to heal that, right, and to resolve that or to contain it, really speaks to how sorrow isolates us. And how those connections, when we first started talking about spirituality, I thought of those connections, like the connections with other people, is what deepens spirituality. It's not just us, right? And our connection to the world, to the divine, to the universe, whatever, but like having that to contain that sorrow is wow, what a wonderful, beautiful way to enact that, and also terrifying.
And the character who survives, the character who becomes strong, is strong because they have created an ecology of nourishing narratives around them.
Right.
And they lean into that.
Yeah. That's wow. This is exciting. Can we
happen again? We're in the meatiest part of the discussion and we're over time.
Sorry.
No,
we may have to adjust our expectations.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a great conversation to have. And it's nice to kind of have particularly a conversation about this game where I'm focusing not so much on the indigeneity of it, but much more on the medicine of it.
Well, this is an incredibly beautiful game. I mean, just the journey of character creation. I enjoy character creation so much anyway, but just the intimacy that I felt with my character in terms of learning that story and what has shaped fear and joy and hope in my character was wonderful. Like I really want to play 3 Jaguar now.
Yes. Great. My work here is done.
Success. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, part of creating this character did help me think about all the newness and transition and change that's going on in my life across the board. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Check out Alan's website, Council of Fools. There's often wise ramblings there or well thought out wisdom. And tune in next month, April 28th, when Tony Vasinda will be our guest. Tony is a game designer, a man of bearded virtue. It will be quite a beard celebration that night. And he's also the host of Plus One EXP and does a lot of podcasts and videos of playing indie games. And I'm not sure which game of Tony's we're playing yet. We still have to discuss that.
Yeah. And then this episode is going to be uploaded to YouTube shortly. I would guess in the next few days. And so if you would like to comment on anything, if you weren't able to join us on the chat, if you'd like to comment on anything, please do so. And we'll keep checking back. And if you want to have a conversation, that'd be great.
You can watch it here for the next 2 weeks with the
Yes.
comment stream still around. And future guests do include Jay Dragon and Ehdrigohr, and more to come. Thank you all for being here. Blessings, everybody.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Alan, so
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
What a treat.
Yeah.
All
Thank
right.
you. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.